Welcome to the deep dive. We've got some really interesting stuff to talk about today.
Yeah, it's always fun to get to dive deep into a new book.
Yeah, exactly. And today's deep dive is into Oliver Burkeman's book, Meditations for Mortals, with the subtitle, 4 Weeks to Embrace Your Limitations and Make Time for What Counts.
That's a mouthful.
It is. Yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful, but it really sets the stage for what we're going to be talking about today.
Sure.
So we all know, intuitively that we have limited time and energy.
Right.
But the world often doesn't feel that way.
It doesn't. Like, the internet makes you feel like you can do everything. You can learn everything. You can watch every show. You can be everywhere.
You can be an expert in every subject.
Yeah, exactly.
So Berkman's book really gets at this tension.
That tension between, the limited human and what feels like a limitless world.
Right.
Yeah.
And the mission for us today is to explore this really interesting idea that's at the heart of the book.
Yeah.
Which is that by accepting our limitations, our finite time and limited control, we can actually live more meaningful and less anxious lives.
Counterintuitive, right?
It is.
You would think that if you just, leaned into your limits, you would just be sadder.
Yeah. You'd just be like, oh, well, this is it. There's nothing I can do.
Exactly.
But it's quite the opposite, isn't it?
Yeah.
So let's jump right in with what Burkeman calls the liberation of defeat right on day one.
Right out the gate, yeah. And so what's so interesting about this is that this concept that life is, and he puts it in quotes, worse than you think, is actually super freeing. And by worse than you think, he just means like it's completely beyond our control.
Like you're never going to have it all figured out.
You're never going to have it all figured out. And like that's just the base reality that we need to work from.
Yeah, I love that image that he uses of being caught in the rain without an umbrella.
Yeah.
You can try and dodge the drops, but eventually you just have to accept that you're going to get soaked.
You just got to give in.
You just got to give in. And there's something about that that's so liberating, right?
It is.
It's like, oh, well, this is happening.
And once you accept it, then the striving against it kind of melts away.
Right. And you can just move forward.
Exactly.
So how would you say this relates to our own lives?
I think this idea of worse than you think can really be applied to just the feeling of never quite measuring up, constantly striving for perfection.
That's so real.
In our work, our relationships, our daily tasks even, right?
Yeah.
And Burkeman's suggesting that these things are also worse than you think in the sense that they're never really going to be fully achievable.
In the sense that we're always going to be striving for that perfect relationship or that perfect job or that perfect productivity system.
Exactly. Like that perfectly organized to-do list.
Yeah.
That's a myth.
It doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist.
So Burkeman, he brings up this Zen teacher, Shunju Kanat. What was interesting about her teaching style?
So she didn't initially try to make it easier for her students, lighten their burden.
Right.
She actually did the opposite, right? She made it feel so incredibly heavy that they would finally just be like, you know what? I have to put this down.
Give up.
Give up. Yeah, exactly. And so by really grasping the weight of our limitations, right, we can kind of give ourselves permission to stop struggling against them.
So once you accept, Burkeman puts it so well, that the plane has already crashed.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Like you're not bracing for impact.
You're not bracing for impact because you're already there.
It's already happened.
What do you do then?
You pick yourself up, you look around, and you say, okay, what can I do now?
And you see what you can salvage.
Exactly.
That's a beautiful image.
Yeah.
So, okay, we've accepted the plane crash. We accepted that we're limited. But now what? How do we move forward? Because I think a lot of us, when we hear make time for what counts, we think systems.
Oh, for sure.
We think productivity hacks. We think, ways to optimize every minute of the day.
Yeah, life hacks, just like any system that we can adopt to kind of cheat our way to getting more done.
Cheat the system, yeah. But on day 2, Burkeman talks about on actually doing things. And his answer is so simple.
Almost deceptively simple?
Almost deceptively simple, yeah.
He just says, you just do them. Like, just pick something you care about and just do it. A little bit today, right now, don't wait.
Yeah.
Don't plan, just do.
So I guess what he's saying is that the system itself can become this form of procrastination.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
The system itself becomes this way of not doing the thing.
Not doing the thing, yeah.
You're so busy optimizing and planning that you never actually do anything.
Yeah, you're so busy sharpening your axe that you never get around to chopping the tree down. So one analogy that I really loved in this section was the analogy of the kayak versus the super yacht.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. What did you get from that?
So the kayak, it represents our actual human existence.
That little fragile, prone to capsizing vessel.
Yes. And we're on this river of time, and we can steer a little bit, we can make some choices, but ultimately we're at the mercy of the current.
We are, yeah.
But then you have the super yacht, which represents this illusion of control that we think we can have over our lives.
Like we can just blast through any obstacle.
Yeah. Yeah, we have all the resources, we have all the time, we have all the energy.
Yeah, we're the captain.
We're the captain.
Yeah.
But it's not real.
It's not real. It's kind of a comforting delusion, but yeah, I think it's a helpful delusion to let go of.
To let go of, yeah.
Yeah.
And this kind of ties into Heidegger's concept of thrownness, right?
Geworfenheit. Yeah. Yeah, it's a fun word to say.
That we didn't choose to be here. We were just sort of dropped into existence.
Just kind of plop, right?
Yeah. And we didn't choose our starting point. Our family, our circumstances, our genes even.
Yeah, all of it.
And so how does understanding this concept of thrownness help us accept our limitations?
I think it helps us kind of let go of the blame. We often blame ourselves for things that are outside of our control. But if we can accept that we were just kind of thrown into this situation, it can be easier to say, okay, well, this is where I am now. What can I do from here?
Yeah. It's not a judgment on you. It's just a starting point.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So we're in our kayaks. We're going with the flow as best we can, but we still have to make choices.
Oh, for sure.
And that leads us to day 3.
Yeah.
And this idea that you need only face the consequences. So what's this all about?
So this is about the illusion that we have no choice in how we use our time and what we commit to because of all these external circumstances and obligations. And Burkeman uses this great quote from Sheldon B. Kopp. He says, "You are free to do whatever you like. You need only face the consequences."
Whoa, that's a powerful one.
Yeah, it kind of hits you right between the eyes.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder that even when things feel obligatory, like we have to do them, there's still a choice, even if the alternatives are kind of unpleasant.
So what he's saying is that consequences are just part of being finite.
They are. Every choice we make means not choosing something else.
Right.
There's always a trade-off.
There's always a trade-off.
Even if it's not obvious.
Right.
Yeah.
So that feeling of having to do something, whether it's, meeting a deadline or attending a social event, it really just means we're choosing not to pay the price of saying no.
We are.
Right.
We're just choosing the lesser of two evils, in a way.
Right. And the interesting thing is the cost of saying yes might be higher than the cost of saying no.
Oh, for sure.
But we don't always take the time to analyze that, right?
We don't. We're often just on autopilot.
Yeah. So how do we start thinking about freedom in this context?
Burkeman suggests that freedom for us finite humans isn't about escaping limitations. It's about experiencing freedom within those limitations.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
So it's about making conscious choices, acknowledging the trade-offs, and being willing to bear the costs.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're making conscious choices within our limitations. But so many of us still feel this immense pressure to be productive.
Yeah.
Like we're starting each day already behind.
In debt.
In debt.
Yeah.
And that's what Burkeman talks about on day 4, against productivity debt. So what is this feeling of productivity debt?
I think a lot of us, we start the day and we're like, I'm already behind.
Yeah.
Like I didn't get enough done yesterday. I didn't get enough sleep. I didn't work out enough.
Yeah, there's always something else that we could have been doing.
Yeah. And Burkeman connects this to the idea of insecure overachievers. Right. People who are driven by these feelings of inadequacy.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us can relate to that.
I know I can.
Yeah, I know I can.
Where do you think this feeling comes from?
I think it's a combination of things, right?
Yeah.
There's the cultural emphasis on work, like the Protestant work ethic. Yeah. The messages we got growing up, always be busy, always be productive.
Be a good worker.
Be a good worker.
Yeah.
And then there's just like the consumerism, the constant advertising telling us that we're not enough unless we buy more stuff.
And do more stuff.
Yeah.
And Burkeman uses a great example from the TV show Studio 60. about this idea of productivity debt. What was it?
Yeah, so they have this countdown clock that's always running. Even when they pull off this amazing live show, the clock just resets for the next week.
It's like that never-ending cycle.
It is.
Of feeling like you're never caught up. But Burkeman offers this really nice alternative perspective to this.
What's that?
He says that our actions don't have to be about achieving adequacy. They can be about expressing our inherent worth.
I love that. Like, we already have worth. We don't need to prove it through our productivity.
Yeah, it's not about earning your worth.
We're about expressing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
And talk about something that I think contributes to this feeling of inadequacy, which is information overload.
Oh, for sure.
That's day 5. Too much information.
Yeah.
We are just bombarded with information constantly.
We are. I mean, just think about how much data is generated every day.
Yeah, it's insane.
Burkeman compares it to like the entirety of the Library of Alexandria.
Oh, wow.
Like every single day.
That's a good comparison.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So the internet, it promised us that technology would solve this filter failure.
Right.
Like we would be able to just filter out all the noise.
Yeah, and just see the good stuff.
And see the good stuff. But what happened?
You know what happened was the filters got better.
Yeah.
But the amount of content just exploded.
Exponentially.
Yeah, exponentially. So now, as Nicholas Carr put it, we have haystack-sized piles of needles.
Yeah. It's not that we don't have the good stuff. It's that we have too much of the good stuff.
Exactly.
So what's the answer then?
Well, a lot of people try to just consume faster, you know, speed reading, listening to podcasts on double speed.
Yeah.
But as one audio specialist put it, you know, you're never going to be efficient enough to listen to it all before you're gone.
You can't speed read your way out of this.
Nope.
So what does Burkeman suggest?
He offers 3 really helpful pieces of advice.
Okay.
The first one is to treat your to-read pile or your listen-to queue like a flowing river, not a fixed bucket.
Yeah.
It's okay to let things just float by.
Yeah, you don't have to read every article that's shared with you.
Nope.
You don't have to listen to every podcast.
No.
It's okay to let some of it go.
It is.
Okay. Number 2.
Number 2 is to resist the urge to stockpile knowledge. Like a squirrel hoarding nuts for winter.
That's a great image.
Yeah. The purpose of information isn't just to accumulate it.
It's to use it.
It's to use it, to learn from it, to grow from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And finally.
And finally, and I think this is the most liberating one, accept that you're never going to get through it all.
Just give up.
Give up, yeah. There's a certain peace in that.
In accepting that impossibility.
In accepting the impossibility, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that leads us nicely into day 6. You can't care about everything.
Yeah, and this is a tough one, right?
It is, yeah. Because in our hyper-connected world, we're constantly bombarded with news of suffering and injustice.
Yeah, and you know, the attention economy kind of feeds into this, right?
It does, yeah.
It incentivizes exaggeration and sensationalism.
So it's not just that there's more suffering, it's that the suffering is amplified.
Yeah, because your attention is valuable, and everyone wants it.
And everyone wants it. So how do we navigate this? How do we decide what to care about?
Burkeman talks about this thing called living inside the news.
Yeah.
Where you're just constantly plugged into the news cycle.
Yeah, you're just refreshing Twitter, refreshing Facebook, refreshing the news websites.
Yeah. And it can feel like you're fulfilling some civic duty, right?
Like you're staying informed.
Yeah, like you're staying informed.
But it can also be incredibly disempowering.
It can be. Because you're not actually doing anything.
Right. You're just consuming.
Yeah, you're just consuming.
And it's emotionally draining.
It is.
Yeah. So how do we get out of that cycle?
Burkeman uses this analogy of the rain barrel.
Yeah.
Which I think is a great image.
What is that?
It's this idea that maybe instead of trying to catch every raindrop, we should focus on catching the biggest, most important raindrops.
So we should pick our battles.
Pick your battles.
And not feel bad about not caring about everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Because you can't.
You can't.
It's impossible.
So he talks about this guy, Eric Haderman.
Yeah.
Who just completely opted out of the news cycle.
He was like, nope, I'm done.
I'm done, yeah.
Yeah.
And he decided to focus his energy on a local wetland restoration project.
Yeah.
And of course, people had a lot of opinions about that.
Oh, of course they did.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think his story raises this really important question. How do we realistically assess our capacity for care and action? Like, how much can we really take on?
Yeah, yeah. Because we're not infinite.
Right. We're not. We're finite. We have limited time and energy.
And so maybe opting out or opting into certain things is actually a way to be a better citizen.
Yeah. Maybe focusing your attention on a few key issues is more effective than spreading yourself thin over everything.
Yeah. Okay, so now let's move from managing external information to managing our internal thoughts.
Yeah.
And day 7 is all about that. Let the future be the future.
I love that title.
Yeah.
It's so zen.
It is. Yeah.
So what is Burkeman getting at here?
He's talking about worry, which is basically just our minds trying to figure out every possible problem before it even happens.
And he says it's doubly impossible.
Yeah, because you can't foresee everything that's going to happen. And even if you could, the solace you're seeking can only come from actually experiencing the present moment.
You can't solve your future problems in the present.
You can't.
Yeah.
You can only deal with them when they arise.
And so he brings up this concept of total vulnerability to events.
Yeah.
What is that all about?
It's kind of a scary thought, right?
It is.
It's the realization that anything could happen at any moment.
Yeah.
And you're not going to see it coming.
You have no control over it.
No control.
But Burkeman offers this really nice quote from Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah, he says, "Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present."
So in other words, you're going to be able to handle whatever comes your way.
Yeah. You have the resources, you have the strength.
Yeah.
You don't need to worry about it in advance.
And so Burkeman, he also suggests that just making a tiny decision can help break the cycle of procrastination and worry.
Yeah, just a tiny decision.
Any decision.
Yeah, anything to get you moving.
Yeah.
Because inaction is often what fuels that anxiety about the future.
Right. It's like you're stuck in this loop of not doing anything because you're worried. And you're worried because you're not doing anything.
Yeah, exactly.
So I love this analogy that he uses from E.L. Doctorow about writing a novel.
Oh, yeah. What was it?
He says it's like driving at night with your headlights on. You don't need to see the whole road ahead of you.
You just need to see the next few feet.
You just need to see enough to keep moving forward.
And trust that the road will unfold as you go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then he ends with a really interesting interpretation of Robert Frost's poem, The Road Not Taken.
Oh, yeah. What was that? So often we think of that poem as being about choosing the less traveled path.
Yeah, about being unique and special.
Yeah, but Burkeman points out that that's not really what the poem's about.
What is it about then?
It's about the fact that we're constantly making decisions with unknown consequences.
Yeah.
And the important thing is to keep choosing, to keep moving forward, even if we don't know where we're going.
Because there's no way to know where you're going.
There's no way to know.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to day 10, this is where Burkeman introduces the idea of the life task. What is a life task?
So Burkeman uses this great story about Carl Jung, who, as a kid, had these mysterious fainting spells.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it wasn't until he overheard his dad talking about how worried he was about Jung's future that he suddenly understood what he needed to do.
And what was that?
He needed to commit himself to his studies.
So it was like this calling.
Yeah, like his life was asking something of him, and that became his life task.
So a life task isn't necessarily about pursuing grand ambitions.
Right. It's about paying attention to what your life is asking of you.
And it's not always obvious, right?
It's not. Burkeman compares it to like a cluttered shed.
Yeah.
You don't need to know exactly what you're going to do with it right away. You just need to go in there, observe, take stock, and the solutions will start to present themselves.
So it's about cultivating that sensitivity to what your life is asking of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to day 13. This is where Burkeman gets really practical.
Okay.
And he talks about how long we can actually focus.
3 hours. That's the title of the chapter.
3 hours, yeah. So what's the deal with 3 hours?
So he calls it the 3 to 4 hour rule for deep work.
Yeah.
And he gives all these examples of famous thinkers and writers like Darwin, Virginia Woolf, who all seem to do their best work in these 3 to 4 hour chunks.
It's not just some arbitrary number.
Yeah.
It's based on how our brains actually work.
Yeah. He talks about how our energy depletes during intense cognitive work, how our peak effectiveness is in the morning, and how non-focused time is actually crucial for creativity.
Yeah, we need time to daydream.
We do.
We need time to let our minds wander.
And he also talks about how limiting our focused work can reduce that feeling of overwhelm.
Yeah, if you know you only have to focus for 3 hours. It's less daunting.
It is.
Yeah. And what's really interesting is that he says that the rest of the day shouldn't be hyper-structured.
Yeah.
You don't have to optimize every minute. You can just let it flow.
Let it flow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how does this relate to the Sabbath tradition?
So the Sabbath is all about stopping.
Yeah.
Not because the work is finished, because it's time to stop.
Yeah.
And I think the 3 to 4 hour rule is kind of like a mini Sabbath.
A mini Sabbath.
Yeah. It's about intentionally choosing to stop working, even if you haven't finished everything.
And not feeling guilty about it.
And not feeling guilty about it, yeah.
So what are the key takeaways from this section?
I think it's about recognizing that we can't master everything.
Yeah.
We can't do it all.
And that's okay.
And that's okay. The valuable skill is stopping and recuperating.
Okay. And finally, day 14, develop a taste for problems.
This is a good one.
Yeah.
So Burkeman starts with this quote from Gilda Radner, the comedian.
Oh, yeah.
She used to say, "It's always something."
Yeah.
And I think that really encapsulates this idea that problems are just part of life.
Yeah, you're never going to be problem-free.
You're not.
So how can we develop a taste for problems?
Burkeman shares the story about Sam Harris, the author and neuroscientist, who realized that he had subconsciously been expecting to reach this point in his life where he would have no more problems. Like, oh, once I achieve this level of success, then I'll be happy and problem-free.
Right.
But of course, that never happens. It never happens.
No. So Burkeman offers this reframing, this idea that the problems are often the job.
The problems are the job.
Yeah. Like your unique contribution to the world often lies in your ability to solve problems.
Yeah, it's not about avoiding problems. It's about engaging with them.
Exactly.
And he ends with this great Haitian proverb, beyond the mountains, more mountains.
Yeah, I love that one.
So what does that mean for us?
I think it means that the journey is never really over.
Yeah.
There's always going to be another challenge, another obstacle.
And that's okay.
And that's okay, because the process of overcoming those challenges, that's where the meaning is.
So to wrap things up,
what
are the key takeaways from this deep dive into Meditations for Mortals?
I think the biggest takeaway is that accepting our limitations is not a bad thing.
It's not about giving up.
No, it's about working within the reality of our situation.
Yeah.
And that can actually lead to a more meaningful and fulfilling life.
So it's not about trying to be superhuman.
It's about embracing our humanness.
Yeah.
And finally, here's something I want you to think about.
Yeah.
Burkeman quotes Bruce Tift in the epilogue.